Well, hey, this is Richard Chansey with 24 to Double, and I've got an incredible guest for us today, my old friend Clay Scroggins. Clay is the lead pastor at North Point Community Church, and today we're going to talk about an experience that we just had together. Clay actually invited a few guys from the business community as well as several members of his team to spend about 3 months diving into the idea of where are we going as a church at North Point. And so I just wanted to say, hey, Clay, thanks for being on today. I've been looking forward to doing this and really kind of aggregating what we've learned to be able to share with our pastors.
Well, I am glad to do it. And Richard, honestly, I feel like you have helped our church so much. Anything I can do to help you, I would do just about anything.
That's awesome. Thanks for saying that. Oh, and just to clarify too, yes, North Point is Andy Stanley's church. He actually works for Clay. That's how it works, right? It's Clay.
That is Andy. Not the way it works, man. We all work for Andy.
That's awesome. Well, hey, why don't we start before we dive into this? Why don't you talk about how did this idea come about to kind of bring a group of people together to talk about the future of the church and how do we embrace it?
Well, it was born out of a problem that we were trying to solve, which I don't know that I'm learning now. I don't think the problem is solvable. I think it's in some ways it's a new reality, but there's a lot of adjustment, a lot of adapting. I feel like that we need to do to meet the new realities that people live with. So the problem that we were having, people's attendance patterns were changing. And so, Christmas is a good example. We just had our biggest Christmas ever. So we had more people at our Christmas services than ever before. The same thing happened at Easter. But then during the year, on our more regular weeks, we were down year over year in attendance and have been for here at North Point in Alpharetta at this location. We've been down year over year probably about 5 years in a row. And I mean, there's a lot of other factors to that. We've started a number of other campuses, but the biggest reality that is happening that all of us are dealing with is we live in a highly digital world now. So the question we were trying to answer is the future of the church going to be analog or digital? And the answer is, well, obviously both. So how do we adjust to the new way that people are living, people's new reality, that they're comfortable watching a service online, and in their minds, now it might not be a 8 out of 10. If our experience live is an 8 out of 10, they might say, okay, what's a 7 out of 10? But it's still better than having to get up and drive all the way in and get in the building and get all dressed up and fight the traffic. So that's what we were trying to do, is trying to figure out how do we adjust to a world where the steps into our building are declining, but our sales are increasing. So more people in group, more people giving, more people, more new guests at our church, and more people serving than ever before.
Yeah, and that that was the hypothesis. Here's what we feel like the challenge is, and then you called a group of people together. Talk about that thought process of, okay, how do we, who needs to be in these meetings, and what does the shape of it look like?
Yeah, well, I think some of it is I am a networker, so I'm an extrovert, so I form ideas through discussion, through conversation, and I'm constantly meeting with people, and so I would be having these conversations on a regular basis with different people, and I found that the people that knew the most about this were people that worked in the business world, because they deal with this on a daily basis. I mean, the digital disruption that has happened in the academic world, in the banking world, in the shopping retail world, in food services. I mean, it's happened in every industry. So every other industry has dealt with this, but the church has I would say we have a legacy business model. We've been doing the same thing for about 2,000 years. You know, we get together and we sing a couple songs, somebody teaches something, we connect with each other, we pray, and then we go home. And we like that model a lot. And so to change it, it was just hard to have the conversation with church people. So I just found that people like yourself that operate a little bit in between, you're in a for-profit space trying to help nonprofits, or even people that are in for-profit businesses that are deeply involved in our church, that they're not bound by the same restrictions that, most church people would be like, well, that ain't church. You can't do that. I wanted people in the room who weren't bound by that, who could say, no, the goal is to lead people in a growing relationship with Jesus. Let's figure out the best way to do that, and let's go attack that. So we met about 8 times, and I think the best thing, I don't know, I walked into it very open-minded because I don't have the answers. I don't know what the answer is. But the good news is no one else does either. I mean, no one has faced this in the church world. There's no church that we could look at and go, oh, look, they've got it figured out. Because this is a brand new issue in the same way that we don't really know, is our holding this phone to my ear, is it going to cause cancer or not? I mean, we don't know. We might find out in 20 years that it does, but we just don't know yet. So
yeah, I'm in trouble if that happens because I sleep with mine under the pillow on airplane mode, so I don't wake anybody up. Awesome. Hey, so let's dive in then and talk about kind of what I know that I got a ton out of this. I mean, like, one of the things that we did, Pastor, if you're watching this, is Clay set it up so that we could go down and meet with the Chick-fil-A marketing team. And that was a pivotal moment for me to be able to kind of take a step back and go, okay, man, technology is disrupting every industry. So let's dive in, talk about, we're going to walk through this document that Clay took what we learned and kind of distilled it down so he could share it with their team, and then that's what I kind of asked him to do with us today as well. So are you ready to jump into that, Clay?
Let's do it, yeah.
Okay, super. Take it away.
So the first thing that, the part that surprised me most was the questions that initially that Richard and a few others asked were, well, what are you trying to do? Let's back up. Like, what's the goal of your church? What's the mission? What's the vision? What's the strategy? Who are you trying to reach? So, Jim Collins in Good to Great, he's got 3 great questions that he uses that were helpful to me. What are you most passionate about? So we had to answer that question, which we've answered it. We just hadn't answered it in a while. And that didn't change. I mean, we're most passionate about life change. That's what we're most passionate about. Secondly, what can you be best in the world at? There's something that you feel like, our church can't do everything well, but we can do this well. And for us, what we want to be best in the world at is we want to be, when somebody, somebody's got a neighbor that moves into their neighborhood, their moving truck shows up and you kind of look out the window going, I wonder who they are. And then you start getting to know them and you go, oh, wow, I want to invite these people to church. We want to be the church that is the easiest to invite someone to. And so the way we say it is we want to create a church that unchurched people love to attend, which that word attending is changing now. So I would say we want to be a church that unchurched people love to experience or that they find irresistible. So that's what we can be best in the world at. And then what can we, his third question is, what is your growth engine? What's the thing that fuels what you do? If you didn't have it, you wouldn't be able to do what you do. And for us, it's engaged people. That engaged people, and when I say engaged people, we define engagement by people that are in group, people that are serving, people that are giving, and people that are inviting. If we can get people to do those 4 things or one of those 4 things, we have found that they stay around longer, that they give more, that they're more invested, they're more involved, and they stick. And it also is best for them. So we don't just do it because it works for our organization. We really believe that for someone to grow in their faith, they need to be connected to each other. They need to be serving in some sort of strategic way. They need to be giving and they need to be inviting because that's how people grow. So that was really helpful for us to go, okay, let's start there. That's what we do. We equip people to create environments where people can do those 4 things: get in a group, serve, give, and invite. So that's where we really had to start.
Hey, let me say I want to say a couple things about that, and then I want to ask a question about something that you went by there that I don't want people to miss. But Pastor, what Clay just described as far as measuring engaged volunteers, here's why that's important, because that's how you build a foundation for scaling. Because if you all of a sudden had thousands of new people at your church and you didn't have people that were there giving to support it, inviting, the invitations and how they get there, but more importantly, the volunteers to do that, you wouldn't be able to sustain it. Churches grow from the inside out. You're always going to have about 20 to 25% of people doing the work. So if you double the number of people you get doing the work, you'll double the number of people at your church. It will come back. Homeostasis, is that the right word? Maybe not. But it will level. That is a good word to throw in here for sure. Yeah. So Pastor, to grow your church, you can grow it from the inside out by building better systems to create people that are giving, serving, inviting their friends, and joining into community. The thing that I wanted to ask you, Clay, you talked about changing that word from attend. Dive into that a little bit, because that was one of the most disruptive thought processes that I heard is, hey, we've got to redefine what it means to attend.
Yeah, we one of the guys that's shaped a lot of this conversation, being in Atlanta, we have a bunch of big companies, a bunch of Fortune 100 companies, and one of them is Home Depot. And the former CEO of the Home Depot goes to one of our churches, and he's become kind of a leading voice for us in this area, which is crazy because he's 70 years old. And we're sitting in a meeting with him. His name is Frank Blake. And I was throwing out this challenge that we're having, that, our attendance is declining, but we have more people in group, more people giving, more people serving, and more new guests than ever before. And he came alive and he said, listen, when I was at Home Depot, we were pouring a lot of energy into HomeDepot.com. And of course, a store manager, how do you think a store manager would feel about that? I mean, they were irate because they felt like that Home Depot was taking money out of their pocket. And the truth is, he said, what we found is that as people shop more at HomeDepot.com, they also shop more at the brick and mortar store, that they fuel each other. They don't fight each other. They fuel each other. And so he said in this one particular meeting, he got super passionate. He said, listen, the statement that you have to create churches that unchurched people love to attend is fantastic. Great vision statement. The problem is that to attend is changing. The way people attend church is changing. And you've got to go do the work to redefine what does it mean to attend. And as you do, what I think is going to happen is you're going to count every digital touch as important as every physical touch. And so we're slowly making that shift to go, okay, we're not going to count different to make ourselves feel better. We're going to count different because the way people are living is different. And I saw a lady last week at a restaurant. I'm having lunch with somebody. She stops me and she said, oh my goodness, our church has meant so much to me. We moved here, started attending, 3 months later, find out that my husband's having an affair. We've been going through a divorce, and it has been a lifeboat for us. I mean, it has been a refuge. And she was like, and oh my goodness, the sermon on Sunday that Andy did was just incredible. It meant so much to me. And I said, hey, let me ask you, which service do you go to? And she goes, oh, I actually, I listened to it yesterday in my cubicle at work. And in her mind, I mean, she didn't say anything about when I attended and what service or whatever. She was just like, I caught church this weekend because I listened to the message. Now, we're not comfortable with that. That's not a win. The win is she becoming more engaged? Is that going to lead her to get into a group? Is that going to lead her to serve somewhere? Is that going to help her become a recurring giver? And then is that going to cause her to invite someone or share the experience with someone? So I'm fairly comfortable with it. Not everybody in our church is quite as comfortable, but I think adjusting to this new reality is pretty important.
Yeah, I think it brings up a good question, is the idea of protecting what we've built versus innovating for the future. And those things are, we're at a time in history where those things can be at odds with each other, that we're going to have to give up to go up kind of thing. So one of the big things that I think the turning point for these conversations is the reality of redefining the problem, like, hey, really understand the problem, and then saying, okay, looking not at the problem as a problem, but finding a different way to think about the problem. And I during this process I did. I mean, like most churches would look and go, hey, we're declining in local attendance. Yeah, we're doing well online, and not try to figure out what the bridge is between those two things. And I feel like we did that well. Hey, let's dive into the middle of the page here, Our New World, and give an explanation.
Yeah. So, I mean, I think, I don't know, I got this from, there's a Jeff Bezos, the CEO of Amazon, wrote a letter to his shareholders that if you've never read it, it's worth Googling. It's fantastic. I think it came out in, I don't know, maybe end of 2016, beginning of 2017. But one of the things he says in it is that that companies have to constantly be paying attention to external factors. And I think we do too. I mean, one of my favorite preaching books is John Stott's Between Two Worlds, that the way preachers should preach is the Bible in a hand and the newspaper in a hand in his day, because we need to be the bridge between these timeless truths and an ever-changing world. And everybody's probably heard that before, but we have to constantly pay attention to what are the external factors that are changing in our world. And so there's a number of external factors that are changing. I mean, the accessibility that people have to content is a new deal. I mean, the fact that people don't even watch TV live now. They wait until all of it comes out on Netflix so they can watch it on demand because content is so accessible. And sermons are so accessible. I mean, I guarantee you that your most bought-in volunteers listen to more than one sermon this week. They probably listen to Craig Groeschel or Tim Keller or Matt Chandler or some other, maybe Joel Osteen or whoever, because content is so accessible and the world that we live in is on demand. Everybody wants what they want right when they want it. To tell somebody, hey, the answer to your problem I'd like to give you, but for you to get it, you got to come to a building at 9 a.m. on Sunday morning. No other industry is okay with that. Every other industry in the world is going, no. We've got to figure out on Tuesday at 4, how can we help them with their problem? So a simple example I use, do you use a handheld vacuum, Richard?
I've seen one used.
For us, we don't have a dustpan. I don't know why, but when we sweep, I mean, we got 5 kids, and so our house is constantly, there's just, our kids eat like beavers, and so there's food going everywhere whenever they eat. So there's crap on the floor all the time, excuse my language. And so we're sweeping up all the time. And we don't use a dustpan. We just grab this handheld vacuum and, suck it all up. Yeah. It broke. It was like 6 months old, and it broke. Black & Decker. I go to the Black & Decker website after about a week of my wife getting real frustrated with me why our handheld vacuum wasn't working. And their answer was drive to Austell to our service center. Well, Richard and I live in a real similar area of Atlanta. Driving to Austell is about an hour drive on a good day. I got 5 kids, a full-time job. The chances of me driving to Austell to get my handheld vacuum fixed, I mean, that it ain't happening. And so I was so frustrated until at the bottom of the webpage, a little thing popped up, a little chat thing. And somebody said, hi, my name's Elizabeth. I work with Black & Decker. Is there anything I can do to help you out today? And I'm like, yeah, you better believe there is something you can do. My handheld vacuum's not working and it's like 6 months old. And she goes, oh, I hate to hear that. Tell me the serial number. I give it to her. She, and 4 minutes later, she goes, hey, what's your address? I gave her my address and she says in 5 days, you'll have a new vacuum. I'm going, that's what I'm talking about. She fixed my problem in that moment. And I'm just wondering, can the church do the same thing? Can we get to where we have the kind of relationship, the kind of technology, the kind of systems in place where the answer is not come to the building at 9 a.m. on Sunday, but the answer is, hey, Tuesday at 4, when you got that marriage problem and you're trying to figure out what to do in your relationship, we've got something for you.
That's huge. That's and Pastor, if you're like I am, most of us, we want to resist change because we got it just how we like it. But this change is coming. These new realities are coming, and the churches that embrace them the quickest, this may be too aggressive, half the churches in America will be struggling or non-existent in 10 to 15 years because they're not embracing these new realities, and people are they're consuming biblical content in so many different ways now. It's a huge opportunity, but if you just see it as, people don't want to come to church anymore, I think the future of your church is dim if you're not figuring out how to take these challenges and turn them into opportunities.
Yeah. So in the middle there, Richard, there's the big statement says think 167. And I grabbed this language from, I don't know, maybe Carey Nieuwhof or Craig Groeschel, somebody else. It's not new to me, or original to me. But the idea is that there's 168 hours in the week. And I know our church, we've ascribed to hey, it's all about Sunday. And we are budgeted, we are staffed, we are structured to focus on that 1 hour of the week. And the world's changing where I don't think it's acceptable anymore to just focus on the 1 hour. People want their answers and they want their problems fixed during the other 167 hours. And so we've got to be able to think about, I'm trying to lead our staff, I'm trying to lead our team to think, what can we do to get into people's lives the other 167 hours? So here's one simple solution just to put it into some real life terms. Our attendance in our middle school area is, on average, a kid attends once a month. So many single parents, so many travel baseball teams, competition on Sunday morning is stiff for a middle schooler now, which is crazy. It didn't used to be that way. So, the place where most groups, we really value community because we want every student to own their own faith. We want to lead them in a growing relationship with Jesus to the point where they own their own faith. That's our goal in middle school. Well, the place where those conversations are happening most are on an app called GroupMe, where every small group, Richard, you lead a group. I would imagine your group has a GroupMe. And, I've been with high school, middle school students where they'll be away from their phone for 30 minutes. They'll come back to their phone. They'll have 67 new GroupMe messages because stuff's just flying. I mean, here's what happened at school today. Here's what's happening this weekend. You're not going to believe this. So-and-so. Did y'all hear this happen? I mean, and that's where life's happening. So what if we could take our 15-minute message that somebody does on Sunday, and what if we could get somebody to cut it down to 60 seconds? And what if we could deliver that to all of our small group leaders on Sunday, and they could put that on their GroupMe chat with one question that says, hey, here's the question I want you to think about. What kind of friend should be able to speak into your life? I want us to talk about that this week. And then what if the conversation on GroupMe turned into that? That's thinking 167. That's thinking beyond the 1 hour of the week where we're going to get them in our building, which in our case, we're going to get them once a month for that 1 hour of the week. So that's it. It's really just a huge deal for our staff, but it led us to ask this question. Okay, what are we doing? If we started to think differently and pay attention to some of these external factors in the world, what are we doing to accommodate for the way the world's changing? We're not going to change what we believe. We still believe that the resurrection of Jesus is the most important thing in anyone's life, and faith in Jesus is the most important life-changing thing. It's the hope of the world. So we're not going to change that, but we do want to accommodate for the way people's lives are different and the way they're living differently. So that's led us to these four big moves that we're going to focus on for 2018 as a team.
Yeah, that's huge. Do you have a mechanism now, Clay, for getting when you're presenting this stuff to the church, because now you're bringing a lot more people into the loop on the thinking and the questions that you're asking? Is there a mechanism that you guys are using now for getting that feedback or aggregating, or how do you wade through the ideas to figure out, okay, what's the next step?
Well, I used that team that we met with in the fall to help focus our attention. I mean, that was one of the big takeaways of the last meeting that we had. I think it was beginning of December into the end of 2017 was, all right, hey, I said, hey, if you guys were me, what are the first things that you would go do? And so they rattled off, oh, you need to do this, you need to do this, you need to do this. Well, I can't do everything everybody wants me to do, but I can sift through that now and go, okay. And so the big moves really came out of those conversations. And I really just used our staff meetings every other Wednesday to say, hey, this is what we're focusing on. This is what I rolled it out at our last one. I've put it on everybody's desk. I've put it in front of everyone to say, hey, these are the 4 things that we're going to focus on this year.
Okay, and let's talk about those real quick, and then we'll finish up.
Yeah, so the first one is to I want our team to be wildly curious. I want us to become students of people's engagement pathway. So what I mean by that is, the way people enter in and get into the flow or the migration of spiritual growth, it's changing. It's not the same that it used to be. And we've got to become students of that. We've got to retrain ourselves. So, for instance, most people that come to our church now, the first thing that they did was they got on a screen. They watched something on a screen. We live in a screen-first culture. So understanding that is incredibly important because it makes us pay attention to the way we think about our website, the way we think about our social media. Our social media has got to be outward-facing. Our website's got to be outward-facing because of the way people are engaging. And then the other thing we've learned is that the first step that people typically take at our church is they get into a group. That's the first step. Well, we've learned that if we don't get them to take another step before that group's over, our groups last anywhere from 12 to 24 months, the chances of them sticking is far less great. And so we're really doubling down on what are we doing to help people take that second step which for us, the second step might be they might start serving, they might start giving, they might start sharing the experience with other people and inviting others and really owning it themselves. But we've got to become wildly curious of people's engagement pathways, of how people are engaging with our church.
Yeah, and that's ironic because, what I do with 2040 Double and the church products that we sell, this idea right here, what you're talking about, we look at it as a funnel. And Pastor, if you're not thinking about, okay, in small group, how are we asking people to go to the next step? Are we training our leaders to engage with people and say, hey, where are you volunteering? Or is there some sort of catalyst or something that we're giving people so that they can understand better who they are, so they know the best place to serve? Like really figuring out where people are and where they need to go that's going to be best for them, and then figure out what all the stopping points are in there, where the hangups are, and then getting them to move through to that next thing.
That's great.
Yeah. The second thing, Clay, was increase margin for staff and budget. Talk about that a little bit.
Yeah. What I found is that nobody on our team is sitting around with nothing to do. Everybody, we're doing a lot of things. We have a lot of activity, and it's one of the dangers of any organization is you just get cluttered. You get busy. We hire motivated people who want to do stuff. I liken it to when we first moved when my wife and I got married. We lived in an apartment for a little while. We bought this little house. We didn't have any furniture in this house, literally for like 2 years. We had been in this house for about 2 years. These kids come up to our door to trick or treat. They looked inside of our house and saw no furniture, and they said, "Are y'all moving?" And we're like, "Moving? We've been here for 2 years. We're not going anywhere." But they just thought because they didn't see any furniture, they thought we were moving. And then 3 years later, we moved out of that house, and we had filled every single closet with stuff, because that's the way life works. You just collect stuff. So the chances are that you've collected a lot of activity at your church that may not be helping. And I know for a fact that we've got activity that we're doing. We've got stuff we're doing that it's not leading people to take a step toward their next thing. It's just an activity. And so we've had to eliminate some of that clutter. And I've really had to challenge our staff to create some margin, both in our budget, but also with our staff. I mean, we need to have, you've got to have room to be able to think about the other 167 hours of the week. And we currently don't have a lot, but in this year we have already begun. We've carved out about 10% of our budget for 2018 to be able to start looking at some different digital opportunities. And we're going to carve out even more in 2018.
Oh, wow. That's awesome. I didn't know that. The third one, accelerate the customer digital experience.
Yeah. We want I just need everybody on our team thinking about, hey, when somebody gets on our website, when they come to an event, when they walk into the building, when they want to sign up for something, we've got to accelerate. When they want to sign up to give, we've got to figure out how are we giving them a better experience. And so, some of that costs money and a lot of it doesn't. A lot of it really is using the best tools that are out there to be able to make it as easy for people as possible. So as simple as, Doodle is a wonderful tool that we use to allow people to sign up for when they're going to come and shoot their baptism, because they've got multiple choices there and they can click on the one that's easiest for them. Our social media, we have outsourced our social media to some people in our church that do it for a living and care about it a lot, because we really believe they're going to create a better product than what we're going to create. Because nobody on our team knows anything. I mean, I was going to say nobody knows anything about social media. There aren't any experts on social media that work on our team, but we've got people that go to our church that do social media for a living. And so we've asked them to handle our social media. So we're creating a digital studio on our website so that there is a concierge that pops up and does what Black & Decker did for me when I got that new handheld vacuum. So basically I want our team thinking in every different way. And then what I've done is I've taken that 10% of our budget that I've carved out, and I've created a fund basically that I control, that anyone has access to if they bring some idea that's going to accelerate the customer's digital experience, that they tell me how they're going to measure whether or not it's working, and that they've set a goal that they want to achieve. And I don't even care if they hit I want them to hit the goal, but we learn a lot if they don't hit the goal. So I just want them to tell me what they're doing, tell me how they're going to measure it, and tell me when they're going to know if they're going to win or not. And I'll fund their idea with this money that I've carved out for margin. So it's a way to get our whole team thinking about this, and so that I'm not the only one thinking about it, because I need everybody on our team thinking about this.
Yeah, that's huge. The last one here, Clay, we talked about quite a bit with the 167, I think. Pursue beyond the road. Is there anything else that you want to say about that?
I mean, I would just say, Richard, one of the big takeaways from Chick-fil-A that we learned, I think, was that, they said, hey, for 70 years at Chick-fil-A, the goal has been get people into the restaurant. But the future of food service is, how are we going to get the food to people? Because food service is, McDonald's is about to hire thousands and thousands of drivers to get into the food delivery, to start delivering food. And they're not the only ones. I mean, it's just I think it's an area that is going to continue to grow. But it highlights that thing that is in our world right now, that people want what they want when they want it. And we're not going to fight that. I mean, I think some of that creates discontentment in people, and we're going to try to help people be content with their lives, just like Philippians 4 says. But we're also going to take advantage of it, and we're going to figure out how can we also help get what we have into people's hands. It's really thinking like a missionary. This is the way missionaries think. If you were to, if God were to call you to Ethiopia tomorrow and you were to drop into the capital, you would think about, how can we get the gospel into people's hands? Because we can't have this mentality that's a field of dreams, if you build it, they will come mentality anymore, because the world is shifting and the world's changing, and I'm not content to just sit back and watch. We're gonna be as aggressive as possible and figuring out how can we take the hope for this life and the next and try to get it into as many people's hands as possible. But to do that, we got to think. We can't think anymore, how do we get people into church? We've got to think, how can we lead people in a growing relationship with Jesus exactly where they are? So that's a huge deal for us.
Okay, let's end with this. There's going to be guys that are watching this are going, yeah, but you're at North Point, and I can only imagine what 10% of your budget is. I can only imagine how much easier it is for you to create change at North Point than it is here, because we do it the way we've always done it, and that's where we're going to do it. What would you speak into that, and how would you tell these guys, and men and women, the next step to take to start this process and this thinking?
Yeah, I have heard that a bunch, and I would say, for one thing, North Point is large, and there's some advantages that come with that, but there's a lot of disadvantages, and one of them is that we love what we do, and we have a Titanic here, and to turn the Titanic takes a long time. And if you're leading a church that is smaller, you have some agility that makes me envious. And it's people like Mark Zuckerberg, who was in a dorm room. It's people like Steve Jobs, who was in his garage, who changed the world because they were agile enough to be able to change what they're doing on a dime. And if you're in a church that is a maybe mid-sized to smaller church, the opportunity that's in front of you, it is an Esther kind of opportunity for such a time as this, is what Mordecai told her. And I really believe that where you are, in the position that you are in, you are perfectly equipped to help figure this out, because you're exactly where God has you. And so I really think that the people that are going to solve this in the future are not the people that are flush with cash. It's not the people that are living in big houses. It's the people that are hungry. It's the people who feel like they don't have all that they need, and that necessity is going to breed creativity. And it's going to be the passion and the zeal for getting Jesus to people that's going to create a new pathway for people and a new opportunity for people to engage with the church. And so I can understand that, Richard, but on the same hand, I would say, listen, you've got a better chance than anybody has today to figure this out. And so I hope that there comes a day where I get to hear the story of somebody that was listening to the 2040 Double conversation about how to handle the digital disruption that has figured this out, that big churches are learning from. That's awesome. And this is what I would tell you, Pastor, is watch this again
and then take the time to map out a plan for your church. I would even take this talk that we've done over the last few minutes, create an agenda of your own, and start having these conversations with people in your church, people on your staff, as well as some of the guys that are doing well in business in your community. They're going to bring things to the table that you haven't even thought of. But I think you can use what we've talked about today as a framework for that very next step. And at the end of it, if you've got a one-page document that looks like the one that Clay's shared today, this is how you get people to engage vision. You do the hard work of making it simple, and then constantly communicate it to your staff, and the parts of it that make sense to communicate to the church, then you do that as well, which those can be different things. So Clay, thanks so much for taking the time to do this today. It's huge. Thanks for inviting me into these meetings. I got a ton out of it. And Pastor, thanks so much for being here today. Please let us know if there's anything we can do to serve you. I hope this was incredibly valuable to you.